Hi, I'm Richard Ashworth. I'm here to talk to you today about hexagram number 32 for the Book of Changes, Heng, sometimes called Constancy. I'm working through all 64 of the hexagrams over a period of 7 or 8 years. These I work with a class first of all, and the second half of that class is looking at the way the hexagram relates to the present day and how we can perhaps read the energy of what's going on and get some idea of what's about to happen. That's one purpose for these ramblings. Major purpose is to offer some ideas as to what you might be being told if you have cast this hexagram today, number 32, Heng. And thirdly, to highlight the timeless wisdom that there is always in the Book of Changes. So these things come out of a class, the first half of which is an analysis like this, the second half of which is discussion of the application of the hexagram to the present day. You can join us for a year if you like, at a time, but I will be carrying on for 7 years. You may not have the stamina for that. But meanwhile, let's talk about hexagram 32, Heng Constancy. Its ruling line, interestingly, is the second line. And the ruling line will either be the best line, if you like, or the one that most typifies the hexagram. And in this case, it is a yang line at a yin place. Now, for interpreting hexagrams, understanding what it means to be what a solid line means, a yang line, and what a broken line means, and what their positioning means will give you a whole load of information. So yang lines are supposed to be the odd numbered lines. So the first line should be yang, and the second should be yin. In this case, the second is yang, which means it is in the wrong place. It is not firm, so it's kind of flexible, kind of dependent, but it is in the central position, in the middle path. So it would indicate that it is in the right place, but it's not kind of easy. But we'll catch up with that in a second because I'll go through them in order. So the balance of this, well, we have thunder over wood. So we have thunder over wind. So we have yang wood over yin wood, brother and sister, if you like. These are dynamic trigrams. They mean things are changing. But the fact of thunder being over wood as opposed to the other way around is quite important. Wind over thunder, which is hexagram 42, Yi, increase. It is about sharing power between the genders, if you like. It's about making sure that the yin voices get heard for greater wisdom. And I venture to say that most of the mistakes that have been made in the world have been made by small groups of men in private, unsupervised. So 42 is about that not happening. This one is more about a commitment. It's called constancy, which is a different thing from duration. It's about choosing a path and sticking with it, but not sticking with it because you said you would, and not sticking with it through thick and thin when it's inappropriate, and not sticking with it when perhaps you're behaving in a way that's completely at odds with it. But if you have thrown this, you are probably faced with a question of commitment. It may be that you're considering becoming committed to something. It might be a relationship, it might be a job, it might be a career, it might be all sorts of things. Relationship, very likely. But it may also be that you are in such a situation and you are considering your relationship with it. And the hexagram goes through several variations about whether you're in the right place, whether you're behaving appropriately, whether you ought to be throwing in the towel. So we will look at that line by line in a second. There are 3 yang lines and 3 yin lines, so pretty balanced in that respect. There is what's called correspondence, because the Book of Changes is all about yin and yang, about male and female, if you like, and about completion, the squaring of a circle. So yang lines and yin lines join in various ways. One of them is that traditionally the first line coordinates with the fourth line, the second with the fifth, and the third with the sixth. And with this, and I recommend that you have the hexagram in front of you, not necessarily any text or explanations, which just tend to get in the way at this point, but just the lines: yin, yang, 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 yin, yin. And the way that they are set up means that they are all kind of knit together. So it speaks of a cooperation. It speaks of two sides to a thing. It's, as Chuck Spezzano would say, heaven is entered two by two. And the ideograph, the Chinese character, is of a boat crossing a river with two people in it. So it's like embarking upon a journey. And I actually quoted in my material, what's it called? It's called The Boat by Christy Moore. It's a great song about the strength of relationship, creating a family, that kind of stuff. Does that sound a bit straight-laced and sensible? Well, I guess it probably is. And also, so there is this correspondence, but also the yin line at the first is supported or supports the yang line at the second, which we established was not in the right place, and the yang line at the fourth joins with the fifth, and so on, which means that when we get to the top of the hexagram, we're dealing with the higher orders. We're dealing with the emperor, when we're dealing with our relationship with God and the rules and those kinds of things. The host, as I said, is the second line. The ideograph, united with the heart in the same boat long term. And for feng shui enthusiasts, the Zhuanggong Gagua is 8/9. That won't necessarily mean anything to everybody. So this hexagram sits around 200 degrees south, and it relates to the year 1990, which is probably more information than you normally get. The way that the different schools of Chinese metaphysics knit together. So the Book of Changes, which has given us yin and yang, and what are called the flying stars, or what are called the 8-house method in feng shui, is one school of thought that has grown up over years, that has over thousands of years, has at least 2,000 years, has married with another school of thought, which is what gives us the animals and the elements. And so there is correspondence between the two. What is called the nuclear of this hexagram, the thing that happened to start off the problem that we're dealing with, is bow splitting, which is hexagram number 23. I think it is hexagram 23, which is lake over heaven, and the structure of that is it's a yin at the top and then 5 yangs. And the way that things progress is that the lower lines push the upper lines out of the way, so it would turn from bow to qian. It would turn from 1 yin line at the very top over 5 yang lines to 6 yang lines. So this is bow is splitting. So it may be that a split of some sort has either led to a commitment or is leading to a questioning of a commitment. And in human relations, that can be exactly the dynamic. So as Christy Moore says, life is an ocean, love is a boat. In troubled waters, it keeps us afloat. Good tune, too. So the text of the hexagram is a sacrificial offering proffered in the divination to take a wife good fortune. So it's suggesting that we are talking about man-woman relationship, and we are talking about commitment, a long-term thing. And Heng and Shan, hexagrams number, this is 32, hexagram 31 and 32, open up what is called the Tao of humanity in the Book of Changes. So we've had the Tao of heaven, which tells us all sorts of metaphysical and deep stuff. We now come to the Tao of humanity, which is about how to run your life. And it's precisely halfway through the Book of Changes. It's made up of eldest son and eldest daughter, which speaks of kind of the next generation, that kind of thing. Anything with Chen in it, the eldest daughter is going to, the eldest son is going to be dynamic. But it's examining the fact that commitment is not the same thing as duration. And we have to look at, well, we're going to look at constancy from lots of different directions. And we're going to look at the trigrams, sorry, the hexagrams that each line takes us to. So we have a 6-line hexagram here, Constancy, thunder over wind. We're going to change each line one by one, and what that will do is progressively give us new hexagrams, which give us kind of answers to the questions that the changing lines said. Sometimes the text of a hexagram is telling you what is so. Sometimes it's telling you what is coming. Sometimes it's telling you what happened. Sometimes it's a warning. Sometimes it's a forecast. And you can't go to sleep on it. It's something that you need to be responsible for dealing with in an intelligent, open way. So the first line is Jun Heng Chun Shong. My tonal language is not great. Wu Yu Li. I'm not a great speaker of Chinese. Nowhere brings advantage is what's being said. And the first line is always of the people. Here, because it is a yin line at the first line, it's incorrect. It's not central. What does that mean? And it's right at the beginning. So it suggests that it's in a hurry. Fools rush in, as they say, where angels fear to tread. It is inauspicious for that reason. So if you've got this line with this hexagram, it says, take your time. It's not a question of instant perfection. It's not a question of demanding that it works right away. Constancy may speak of a need to put in the hours, a need to put in effort perhaps, but certainly a need to put in patience, a need to put in understanding and humility. The Book of Changes is always talking about humility. But this is the dangers of fast food, if you like, immediate gratification, immediate perfection, and that's probably not a healthy thing, because in order to take on a big undertaking, we probably need to learn a bit. Probably need to enter it with some consideration. Most things require a little bit of effort. The Tao is not necessarily the fast route. It's not necessarily the slow one either. There's not necessarily not the slow one. But you can compare this line with hexagram 33, which is called yielding, which is about opening up totally, just letting go because there's nothing you can do. And hexagram 5, which is called waiting, which is water over heaven, which is who knows how long it will take. But the line that if you've thrown this first line, this changing line, you want to be great now, perhaps. And that's something to be a little bit careful with. It changes this line. If we change this line on hexagram 32, it becomes hexagram 34, which is called Dazhuang. Great strength is often called. And one of the lessons of Dazhuang is that it is, be aware that if you're getting an advancement, that you may need to grow into it. Dazhuang is a warning that the advancement or inheritance or hereditary power you're about to receive may be too hard for you to handle. And it may be you need to pay attention to learning how to handle it wisely in order to be safe in using it, and in order to be useful to other people, and in order ultimately to make a success of it. It's six. The first line, 6 at the first, is a kind of a bull in a china shop. They're in too much of a hurry. It is not appropriate. And you can tell most of that from which line it is and where it is. The next line is a 9 at the second. So since this is thunder over wind, wind is yin, yang, yang. So the second line is a yang line. Because it's the second, it is incorrect. It's in the wrong place. But it is central and it is firm. So guess what it's saying? It's saying this may be a bit difficult, but you should probably stick with it. It resonates with the fifth line, so it has a connection with someone or something that shows how this process can work. A connection perhaps with someone else who's done this and it's worked for them. They stuck with it. They're 4 stages ahead of this person. It is accepting a difficult situation and sticking with it, but it's not stubborn And it's not unconscious, it's not routine, it's not something to be resentful of. I mean, resentment is a deeply irresponsible position in the first place. It says you've got no choice, which is clearly not the case. But this is the ruler, it is the keynote. It is about sticking to the underlying value despite everything. That might be the best word, value. It changes to hexagram 62, Shao Guo, and the image of that is a bird with clipped wings. And my daughter sometimes refers to her husband as the old ball and chain. I mean, she's joking, of course. But the idea is that we accept having clipped wings. If heaven is to be entered 2 by 2, we become interdependent. We are like two, pillars or something holding each other up. One moves, the other one falls. Like that. And independence is not necessarily an absolute good. Perhaps interdependence is a more healthy way of approaching the world. I mean, it seems to me everything is about relationship. So this is about accepting a situation that won't resolve easily, and it's about sticking with it, being consistent with it, even though it is uncomfortable. Which brings us to the third line, not constancy in virtue, bu heng chi dei, huo chen chi shun, one may meet with disgrace. Persistence leads to regret. Now this person is grudging. This is a yang line because this bottom trigram, wind, is yin, yang, yang. It's a yang line at the third, so it is correct and it's firm, but it is not central. It's not balanced. It's grudging. It is unfortunate. It is sticking with something that's uncomfortable, sticking with something where they think they may have made the wrong decision. It's sticking with something possibly you might say for the wrong reasons. It responds to the sixth line, so there is help up there. There's a yin line right up there, but it's hemmed in, constant but with little choice. And the trick is to choose at which point the Tao becomes the will, by which I would suggest is meant. For the most part, what we're doing is generally being very willful, and we're going to say, this is the right way to go. And sometimes the Tao says, you're wrong, it's that way. And what we tend to do is say, come on, Tao, get over here, which is actually pretty fruitless. But when we do that, and we, subordinate our will to the Tao, and then we kind of over time we get that actually that was our will. We're pretty silly creatures for the most part, and we do know what's appropriate. We can feel the Tao, but sometimes we think we know better. And by the way, in order to make it more complicated, of course, sometimes we do know better. So this is the third line. It changes to hexagram 40, deliverance, which may have impact in terms of what's happening in the world right now. That may mean something. But deliverance is water, thunder over water, the relief of the rain in the storm cloud. Not quite safe yet, not grounded, not on the far bank. So it's unfortunate, this one. It is kind of slavish. And it's really, the person in this situation has not made the commitment. They're still hovering. And there's no right or wrong about that. The fourth line, Tian Wu Qin, in the field no game, is more difficult again. Hunting, but there is no quarry, is one of the translations that are offered. It's the wrong activity in the wrong place. I mean, it's a married man in a singles bar. It's a, it's a spy, if you like, or a traitor, something of that sort. But it implies disloyalty, unspoken uncertainty, mistaking constancy for words or beliefs, feeling that they are committed just because their body's in the right place, and yet not actually being true to that. I mean, among men, it is the difference between being committed and being available, and those words are very often misunderstood. But the question that you're being asked, if you've thrown this one, is your persistence misplaced? are you in the wrong place? And you may be. There's no right or wrong in it. And this one changes to Sheng, ascending, hexagram 46, which is thunder over wind. I sometimes call it levitating because of the shape of it, if you think of the shape of it, which is a seed breaking through. It's sequential unfolding, a new higher level, but it suggests that in order to get through this, you're not going to do it through willpower, and you're not going to do it through self-righteousness. And a lot of this theme of constancy is about people being right in a political sense, having, politicians have to have always been right, which is terribly painful for them. And the same with world leaders. Once they've made a decision, that for some reason they're not able to say, you know what, I've screwed this one up. And you and I know that happens from time to time to us lesser humans, as well as to people leading nations when they've committed themselves to war when it wasn't a great idea, or committed themselves to elections when it was an even worse idea, or whatever. But this one, it's probably a time to seek advice from a higher power. The fourth line is just short of the fifth, which is the real ruler. It's the place of the emperor. That's what I mean. But it's too early. We're not actually the sixth, which is actually where the higher power is. So, which brings us to line 5, which is the most interesting and the most problematic. Constant in virtue and perseverance, for a woman good fortune, for a man misfortune. Now, there are those who interpret this because it is central, and it is incorrect, and it is not firm. So it is about a woman, and it is often interpreted as being about listening to the divination of a woman, listening to your wife, for instance, which I suggest is a wise choice to make. Smart men learn from their wives. Women sometimes grow up when men very rarely do. But it is an interesting one because it is suggesting that there is a role for women and a role for men. And in the third decade of the 21st century, I'm not entirely sure that we're all in agreement with that one. Broadly, what Confucius is saying is that blokes do important stuff and the women make the tea. And I'm not sure that that's really a complete account of it. And it's very interesting that the fact is that the title of the hexagram and the text of the hexagram are, whatever it is, 3,000 years plus old. The text of the lines are much younger. And the interpretations that are usually respected are Confucian interpretations. And the assumption here is that there is an underlying principle upon which we all agree. And I think philosophers have been arguing about that for at least 2,500 years. Confucius reckoned that an ordered society was an absolute good. And most of us would say that's a pretty good idea. But whether that's an absolute good is another question. And what Confucius also reckoned was that an ordered family made for an ordered society. And again, we'd probably agree with that, connection. And we'd probably agree it was a good idea, but I'm not sure we'd say it was an absolute good. And I'm not sure that the Tao concerns itself with such absolute goods. So it's interesting that Confucius has, first of all, hijacked this line to say there's a role for man, there's a role for woman. He may or may not be right, but also hijacked to say that there is an underlying principle which we can agree on and put in writing. And I think both of those things are to be questioned. So if you have thrown this line, I think you need to look at the various roles of the genders and how you react to that, how appropriate they seem to be. Be aware of what the underlying unifying principle is. I think possibly constancy is, maybe a less good translation than something like common values, but they may shift around. This is subtle stuff. They may shift around and still be the same, if that doesn't sound silly. And the line that this changes to is Da Guo. The hexagram this line changes to is Da Guo, the ridgepole, number 27. Preponderance of the great, which is about breaking point is coming. It's about huge pressure. It's for politicians, for instance, it's about the pressure to continue to be right, consistent, to follow ideological, maybe even spiritual or religious values. And this one is saying perhaps the rules need to be questioned. Perhaps the rules make assumptions that are no longer valid. Maybe there are no rules at all in the first place. So this is a very uncomfortable one, an interesting one, because it suggests that we may get most value from Book of Changes sometimes by ignoring Confucius. There you go. A 6 at the top line, constant agitation, misfortune, Chen Heng Shong. It is correct because it is a yin line at the 6th position. It's to do with heaven and spirituality and being beyond these things. It resonates with the 3rd line, so it is kind of supported. Some would say it is kind of overzealous, kind of noisome. I guess because it's connected with the 3rd, so it's still kind of partly in the world. But I think the most informative thing is to look at the hexagram this line brings us to, which is number 50, which is Ding, the cauldron, which is about a change of dynasty. And that is no small thing. It is a major, major change. A change of dynasty in Chinese history was a time of destruction and mayhem. I mean, the early Ming emperor's main job was to get rid of all their rivals, killing their cousins and second cousins and the children of the concubines and all kinds of stuff like that. And that, of course, is not a Chinese thing. You just need to read about the Wars of the Roses. Battle of Tewkesbury, I think it is, 1471, which was all about the slaughtering of the heirs. It's kind of Game of Thrones stuff. Why am I saying this? It's about a big, big change. If you've thrown hexagram 32, line 6, big change, you have choice. But it's whether you change with the change, whether you think you need to move on, and that may be the case. But it may be you have to really examine the nature of your commitment to this thing that you're apparently constant to. So that has been hexagram number 32, Heng, Constancy. As I say, I teach this once a month on the first Wednesday of each month. You can join us for a year at a time if you like, and you can access the catalogue of the previous hexagrams we've looked at on my YouTube channel. But you can join the class, which will cost you something to be in it for a year, in which case you can participate with how it is this hexagram relates to this particular time, which we discuss, and your guess is as good as mine. So this is Richard Ashworth. Thank you for paying attention, and this has been Heng number 32, The Constancy. Bye.